Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Arik.
Lillian.
And today we are going to be focusing on a Jon chapter. What number Jon is this?
Jon VI.
Jon VI. As always, I'm going to go over the podcast format. So first we're going to identify the main character and who the chapter focuses on. Next we're going to move on to what they did and what actually happened inside the chapter. Our third point is who held the biggest influence on that character and why. Next, we move on to knowing how the future plays out, what should the character have done differently to avoid that result. We go on to how do the actions in this chapter affect the other plots. And then towards the end, we round it out with best lines from the chapter, any standout appearances from other characters, and then lastly with theories that apply. Okay, so for a quick summary of this Jon chapter, we open up, and Sam gets confirmation that he can actually join the Night's Watch. Really excited, really giddy about it. The recruits fall into the Sept. Lord Commander Mormont comes in with the rest of the leadership. He tells them the rules to the Night's Watch, pretty much. Pip, Gren, and Toad get sent to the Rangers. Sam, Daron, and Jon get sent to the Stewards. Jon's really upset about this until Sam kind of tells him the benefits of what his specific position is going to be. Sam also requests to say his vows at the Heart Tree with Jon. So they go beyond the wall, they go into the grove, they say their vows, and at the very end, Ghost finds a hand. And that was the chapter. Not a whole lot of action happened, but some saying their Night's Watch vows and where they get placed is a pretty big deal, and it's not something that we can really skip over. You have anything else to add to that?
That's what I have written down as well.
Alright. So now we'll go into who held the biggest influence on the main character and why. Now before we skip over that, Jon is the POV narrator, and he is the main character in this chapter. So I put the Lord Commander Mormont and the Night's Watch culture, very similar to the Daenerys chapter we just did, held the biggest influence over Jon.
And that was it? Just the Night's Watch?
Yeah. It's focusing on their branching assignments and him swearing his life to this military organization. And he does, for a sliver of a second, have the option to back out, and he doesn't take it. So everything he does, he doesn't make any real personal decisions, aside from taking the vow outside the wall in the Weirwood Grove. So everything is dictated by the Night's Watch and Lord Commander Mormont.
Okay, I can see that. So taking it a step further from that, I had that Sam really influenced Jon. You know, Jon started acting like a spoiled brat. Everything isn't fair. Do you take me for a servant? And everything like that. And it really took Sam to bring him back down to earth and, you know, back to reality.
I agree with that. It's a good point. Sam was really the voice of reason there with Jon. Lord Snow over here thought he should have been something better. So, an interesting one for this next one, moving on, knowing how the future plays out, what should Jon have done differently to avoid it? I didn't have a whole lot first. I thought everything kind of worked out in his favor aside from being placed in the Rangers, but we know with his position as steward, he rises to become Lord Commander and all that stuff. But, I mentioned a second ago, he had an opportunity to leave the Night's Watch, and knowing how the War of the Five Kings erupts, and how Jon wishes he could have been with Robb, and Ned dying and doing all that stuff, Jon could have left, rejoined Robb in Winterfell, and then had a much bigger role in the affairs of the realm that way. And it would have been really interesting to see what Jon would have done, and what kind of things Robb would have confided in him, and how everything would have played out had Jon been done there with Robb.
Do you think Jon would have taken a position kind of similar to Theon in being kind of a peer advisor?
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. Probably even more influential than Theon. I'd say Kat would maybe have, or would be the only person who has more of a say with Robb. But after Kat, I think it'd definitely be Jon. Oh, and Maester Luwin, I guess. But
yeah,
with Jon and Robb being battle buddies for the whole way down there, like they definitely would have formed a lot closer bond. And Robb would have gone to Jon for a lot of advice, I imagine.
Do you think it would be similar to the situation with Torrhen Stark, the king who knelt, and his bastard brother? I can't remember the bastard brother's name, but he was willing to try to go and kill Aegon one-on-one. Do you remember that?
Yeah. We don't know anything else about the relationship, though, so I can't really tell you if it would have been like that.
Okay.
You have anything else?
I couldn't come up with anything for that one.
Okay. Yeah, that one took me a second to find something to roll in there. Like I said, everything kind of plays out, I guess, the way it should. If he was a ranger, I guess he could have maintained the same path. He'd risen up the ranger ranks and still would have had strong ties to the leadership, and then he could have been elected Lord Commander all the same. But it wouldn't have been that much different, I don't think. And with him being with Lord Commander Mormont, he gets the White battle, and they're in a couple chapters ahead of now. So, as far as his Night's Watch storyline, I don't think he should have changed anything. I think he made the right choices. Well, he didn't really make any choices, but he shouldn't have done anything different. That's for sure.
Do the newer rangers immediately go out and start ranging after they take their vows?
No. Gren, Toad, and Pip, they kind of hung out for a while.
Because the only thing I can think of is if Jon went to the Rangers, that he kind of would have gone rogue and tried to find Benjen. That's the only thing I can think of.
He definitely would have tried. He would have pushed for it. Alright, so moving on. How do the actions in this chapter affect the other plots? So, contrary to that last one, I put it binds Jon and Sam to the wall of the Night's Watch, and no War of the Five Kings for them. It definitely takes them out. It's illegal for them to do that, and they'd be killed if they got caught running away and doing that. More long term, Jon staying there in the Night's Watch and at the wall, it enables Stannis to have a base up there in a Dance with Dragons. That's much later on down in the story, but I don't imagine a whole lot of other people would have allowed Stannis to set up camp up there, especially since his big deciding piece was that he was going to go save Arya Stark, and Jon, doesn't explicitly allow him to do that for Arya, but it definitely has an effect on his decision down then. But yeah, it's definitely a pivotal role in Stannis' line that he has to sit up there at Castle Black in the Night Fort. So
not that we're biased to Stannis or anything.
No, but it does enable Stannis to do it because no one else probably would have let Stannis sit up there. It was illegal for Jon to let Stannis do that. They take no part in the affairs of the other kingdoms, and a claimant to the throne was basing out of the wall and using their castles and using their men.
Okay.
Do you have anything for that? How it affects the other plots?
Not necessarily the other plots, just future Jon chapters. Ghost finding the White's hand and how that all plays out.
Right, yeah, I was going to mention that, but at this point he just finds a hand, and we don't really know what the hand is, who it belongs to, or anything like that. So I didn't feel like I should drop that one in there. It's just there's a hand in chapter. So for the next one, it's definitely more applicable there, but I didn't think it fit in here.
We'll revisit it.
Definitely will. You have anything else?
That's it.
Alright, so we move on to best lines from the chapter. Well, Jon's pretty boring, so aside from him complaining, there wasn't really anything he said, but there was a description when they get to the werewood grove. The leaves are on the ground, and it says they're blood red on top and black rot underneath. And the blood on top kind of signifies life, being alive, with the blood imagery and red. And then underneath is black and rot, and that's kind of symbolism for dead things and for cold. So you kind of have a little ice and fire comparison going on with the weirwood leaves. I thought that was kind of interesting. It stood out to me.
Yeah, I think it's definitely meant to, increase the presence overall of the trees and how important they are to the old gods and that entire story of everything happening north of the wall.
I also put down the Night's Watch vows. There's a lot of stuff in there. I wasn't real sure if we should drop it in, or if I should put this into our theories discussion or not. So I guess I'll save some of those particular lines for that segment of the podcast. But not really the stuff that everyone talks about, but some other things that I don't see a whole lot of traction on.
Okay.
So we'll talk about that when we roll over there. But the Night's Watch vows, definitely an important piece of information there, and yeah, everybody knows how that rolls out. What do you have for best lines?
Pretty much the same thing. I had marked the Night's Watch vows, and a lot of the lines from Jon where he's just complaining, but it's nothing substantial.
Yeah, he's acting very uppity, very Lord Snowy there. And I didn't want to put that in there. Standout appearances. So, I put Aemon and Sam, and this kind of goes back to your point that they influenced him and all that. So I said Aemon and Sam showing and telling Jon to shut the fuck up, pretty much, and be like, we took you for a man of the Night's Watch. Were we wrong about that? And Sam has to go tell him, no, this is a good thing. You're gonna hang out with Lord Commander. Like, it'll be fine. It'll be great. And Jon's just like, oh yeah, I guess that is kind of cool. Sorry, I was being a bitch.
He's such a spoiled brat in this chapter.
There was a good performance there by Aemon. Aemon only said that one line, didn't he?
Yes.
The whole chapter. Yeah, so all he does is tell Jon to stop being a crybaby. But yeah, Sam being the voice of reason and calming down Jon is a little bit of role reversal there.
Yeah. For as much compassion as I have for Jon, it's hard to feel that way in this chapter. Because it's obvious he's lived such a privileged life. Don't make that face at me.
In this chapter, more like this chapter, every single chapter before.
We're rereading, okay, and I'm trying to be more open to my thoughts on the characters.
You have anything else for best lines?
Best lines. I thought we moved on to standout.
Yeah, I'm gonna stand out. Sure.
You confused me so much right there.
Right.
So standout for me was Ghost, actually. Because he comes out of the woods with the hand, fine. But Jon notes that he looks like the werewoods, white fur and red eyes, like the trees. So it really introduces us to the parallels between Ghost and what's happening north of the wall. So I thought that really made Ghost more important to the story.
Yeah. Do you have anything more? Was that it?
That's it.
Well, that's a good segue, because as we move into theories, I had that same thing. Ghost, white fur and red eyes, just like the werewood. Is there any chance that Ghost has been always skin changed or warred by Children of the Forest? Or even Bloodraven?
I wrote down Bloodraven. Like the exact same thing, but with Bloodraven.
Get out of jail free card. You can just... That's weird. Probably Bloodraven. But no, the explicit connection with him and looking like a werewood, and us knowing that the Children of the Forest, hang out in those things all the time. Could there be a chance that, because Ghost doesn't make any sound ever, could that be because he's being possessed by a child of the forest?
Well, what is it? People draw the comparison between, is it Ghost and Mel? Because they both have red eyes, and he likes Mel, and Mel supposedly could be Bloodraven's daughter, and all that stuff. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure where you're going there with Mel. Ghost was like, hey, pretty lady, pet me.
Well, just
hi, daughter.
But Ghost doesn't like... Does Ghost like people? I thought he didn't like people.
I mean, he gets confrontational at times, and Jon's like, hey, bad dog. And he's like, yes, miss.
Well, because I remember Jon being scared that he was gonna, snarl at Mel or something. Not necessarily attack her, but scare her.
Yeah.
But so going on with that, another thing I wrote down, which is basically the same thing. If he's not being warged by a child or Bloodraven, was he directed to the hand? Did they lead him there somehow?
Very possible. But it would have had to been the mother direwolf.
How?
Oh, you meant lead him to the hand. Okay, never mind. I thought you meant like lead him to Jon.
Oh, no. Yeah,
when
lead
you
it
said
to
hand, I thought bed.
He wasn't. Was he? He wasn't the hand then. Yet.
No. But that was the intent the whole time, and Bloodraven. So.
Well, we know that.
But yeah, no. That's definitely possible. Bloodraven was being like, "Hey guys, I brought you this thing here. Maybe we should do it."
Yeah.
Okay, so another part of before we get into details about the oath, Jon's oath is binding, and there is no escape from it, even during death. Not bringing in any kind of show talk in here, because in the books he does die, and this is applicable here. So in Tiwal, whenever he does most likely become alive again, he is not free from his vows, in my opinion. There's all kinds of loopholes in it until my death for this night and all the nights to come. You keep shaking your head.
Just because I hate that argument. Yeah.
My argument?
No, not you. I agree with you. Oh,
there we go. Okay. Yeah,
I hate people. He died, so it's done. No. Okay. But you don't want to talk about the show, so I'm stopping myself.
Yeah. It's applicable to the books because he does die. So with him, he passes out and he feels cold, I guess. It's heavily influenced that he's dying. He is bleeding out in the snow.
If he's not dead, that's going to be really stupid.
Yeah.
Like how... I'm just going to stop. Stop.
So.
Alright, so what were the parts of the vows that you were going Katie on?
Calm down, man. Can't say my So, in it says, the horn that wakes the sleepers. What is the other phrase that we hear about something will wake somebody sleeping?
The giants.
Dorman's horn will wake the sleeping giants.
Is it waking giants from stone or waking giants?
Well, waking stone dragons.
Yeah, that's not right. I'm mixing them up.
So, but yeah, in the oath it says, I am the horn that wakes the sleepers. That's what it says I am. I am this, I am this, I am that. I am the horn that wakes the sleepers. It's very interesting that that's part of the Night's Watch vows, and we also hear that same phrase spoken about with the Horn of Winter / Jormung's horn, if they are one and the same, will wake the sleeping giants. Is there some kind of connection to the Night's Watch when the vows were created and to waken the giants? Did the Night's Watch originally own the horn? Jormung was said to be a wildling. Was he always a wildling?
Jormung teamed up with a Stark, right, to defeat the others? Or no, the Night's King.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was Jormung then.
I thought it was. It was one of the kings beyond the wall. I thought it was him. And they teamed up with a Stark to defeat the Night's King. But if that's what it is, those vows would have already been in place. Unless they've updated them throughout the years.
I don't imagine they've been updated.
So I'm having a hard time tying Jormung's horn to that. If I'm thinking of the right person.
I mean, the horn would have been, like, if the legends are true and the horn breaks on the wall and wakes up giants, it would have been around before Jormung. It just got his name. Because it's also called the Horn of Winter, right? Are they the same thing, or are they two different things?
I think it's the same.
They're the same, right?
Yeah. Alright, you have a point.
The Horn of Winter would have been around for a while, and I guess Jormung just stacked his name on it to make him more famous. But anyway, this horn will wake sleeping giants. The Night's Watch says we are the horn that wakes the sleepers. It's an interesting connection there.
I wouldn't have looked at it that way. I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah, the literal would be the horn blast to warn people about wildlings and others and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like that would be like the literal translation of it, where you're just like, oh yeah, that's what it means. But when you throw in that other line where they talk about waking up sleeping giants, it's like, well, is that supposed to mean something else now, or what? Or is it just coincidence?
Is that the only line?
I thought that was interesting.
No, it is. I wouldn't have put that together.
Another part of the vow that kind of sticks out is when they say, right before the horn that wakes the sleepers, it says, "I am the fire that burns against the cold." Very similar to how when the others are around, the cold burns. It's so cold that it burns, and now Jon is saying that he will be a fire that burns against cold. Some very interesting and specific contrast there. It's definitely talking about the others in the valley right there. It's not just talking about defending it from winter or it's cold. So the Night's Watch definitely, we know, was formed in legend against the others in the Long Night. But the phrasing of it, the fire that burns against the cold, and us hearing that cold that burns, just kind of sticks out. And if Jon does, or if there's the LML theory that the first or the last hero and his companions were kind of like the walkers. They were the cold hands type things.
Yeah.
We don't even really know what they are called yet. They're not whites, they're not walkers or others. Cold hands seems like he's something else. So if Jon does come back and he's a cold hands type thing, and if cold hands is actually was a former member of the Night's Watch, that would go back and tie it into members of the Night's Watch become these cold hand type things, and they will stay there and man the wall forever, or something like that, right?
Sure.
I didn't lose it there, right? That doesn't sound too crazy.
No.
Because cold hands is wearing the attire of the Night's Watch, right?
Yes. He wears the black cloak.
Yeah. And if that whole Luciferian's Lightbringer theory comes up true. By the way, guys, I'm not going to go through and tell you guys the entire thing about the Order of the Green Zombies. That's a whole thing. It's a 2.5-hour podcast. But basically, the last hero and his companions were turned into cold hand type things, and cold hands is either the last hero or he was one of them. And I'm just kind of ripping off that idea.
Okay, I haven't listened to that one, so that makes more sense now. Because I was like, where the fuck did you get that in the other series?
Probably should have led it with that first.
Yeah, well, and then that goes with, I'm the sword in the darkness, the light that brings the dawn, ending the long night, and all of that. Like, it all goes towards defeating the others, basically.
Right. Yep. The light that brings the dawn sounds like a Lightbringer type thing. I normally associate the last hero and Azor Ahai, who made Forge Lightbringer, as two separate people. It's very interesting that the place where the last hero was is talking about lighting up the dawn, about bringing light. So maybe that's all wrong. I mean, the last hero is Azor Ahai.
That's possible. I like to think that Azor Ahai was on the side of the Five Forts, and the last hero was by the wall.
Yeah, same. Azor Ahai is, the Ashai god of, or Bloodstone Emperor, sort of.
Yeah.
But no, it's just interesting that with Lightbringer being over in Essos, that the Night's Watch is talking about their own version of a Lightbringer.
Well, and it makes me think of Dawn and the Sword of the Morning and all of that stuff. And then I hate thinking about that because I'm like, that doesn't make any damn sense.
Yeah, so a lot of people want to talk about Dawn being pivotal in that, but if that's the case, then why is the seat of the Sword of the Morning all the way down in fucking Dorne? Like, almost as far away from the wall as you can get in Westeros. Like, the namesake and the title definitely lends itself to believe it's some part of ending the long night, and maybe the dude went up there. But it's a tough time with the Danes being settled down there in Dorne, like in this secluded area, that they would have any ties to the long night. Again, the guy could have just went up there, he did his part, he's just like, I gotta be up here because all of this shit's going down. But it just seems like it fits, but at the same time, when you look at it geographically, it kind of loses me a little bit.
Well, yeah, and then that goes also with, people who advocate for the high tower. What are their words? We light the way.
Mm-hmm.
That the high towers had something to do with the long night as well, and it's the exact same thing. They're right next to Dorne. It's so far.
Yeah. So you almost just got to believe that it was some kind of unified Westeros thing where everybody just went up there north, which is definitely possible. But with Dom being currently like so far away from the wall, like I don't see well, I guess if we got 2 books to go, like so much shit can happen in 1 book, let alone 2. If Darkstar somehow manages to steal Dawn and go up to the wall, like that's a thing that could happen.
We're like so. I was about to talk about Darkstar.
Yeah.
Maybe this is why we need a third person. We just talk about the same shit. I still don't get him, like why he is Darkstar, and I don't know. I just don't get it.
I have no idea what to think about Darkstar, except that he's innocent of cutting up Marcella.
I agree with that.
He was framed, goaded into a confession Duran goaded Arion into naming him as the culprit. He was basically like, it was Darkstar, right? It was, right? It was Darkstar. Say his name. Say it was Dark. And then she's just like, yeah, it was Darkstar. And he's just like, I knew it. Knew it the whole time. Darkstar did it. Go get him.
Yeah. Who knows?
Anyway,
maybe
that's a tangent.
Maybe something will happen.
If Darkstar, I don't know if he's actually going to be the candidate that takes Dawn. He definitely seems like the person to be the next Sword of the Evening. Do they have their own special sword? I don't know.
If they do, it's probably not made out of milk glass.
It'd be what, Valyrian steel, right? Valyrian steel's dark.
Yeah.
So, what would it be called if there's dawn? What would it be called?
Night. Dusk.
Yeah. Dusk.
Evening.
A sword called Dawn sounds a lot cooler than a sword called Dusk, but I don't know. Well, no. I don't know. It's
like the more you think about it, it's kind of badass.
It sounds cool.
Yeah. I don't know.
What do you have for theories?
Well, we talked about all of that stuff. So, back to Bloodraven. So I'm just wondering, you and I, anyways, kind of believe that, Bloodraven was in Mormont's, in his Raven, right? You believe that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm wondering, did the Raven basically inception Mormont into choosing Jon to be his assistant? Like, Bloodraven would want him to be there, you know what I'm saying?
Well, couldn't Bloodraven just send a dream to Mormont?
That would be easier, but that's not what I was thinking.
Or Mormont just be like, oh, this is Ned Stark trained this kid. Yeah, I'll take him up.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of, the direct...
Ned's probably taught him how to be a squire. I need a good squire. What happened to Mormont's old squire? Like, why doesn't he have one already?
I don't think we ever hear about one.
But no, I think Jon makes a pretty good case on his own standards to be Mormont's squire without Bloodraven pressuring him.
Just with like the noble birth,
because Jon is the best one in the yard with the sword, and again, he was trained by Ned Stark, so he probably already knew what he was doing as far as squiring. Jon didn't really squire for Ned, right? That was Theon.
I don't know if it was Theon, but Jon specifically calls out in this chapter that Ned had Robb go with him, to his council, so he knew how things were kind of run, diplomatically and things like that. But Jon didn't participate in that.
Yeah, I know.
So I think the most Jon could bring from it was that he knows how to carry himself because he's been around lords and things like that. And like you said, he was the best with the sword. He was castle trained.
I'm sure in the next Jon chapter, Mormont will give his reasons.
Does he give his reasons?
I haven't read that part yet.
I don't remember. Well, it's not like I read the books anyways, so whatever.
Alright, so for the next, we have a good couple of chapters coming up. We have Ned's coup, we have Arya's escape, we have Sansa's letter, and then we have Jon battling the White and Mormont's chambers. So those are 4 really good chapters, and then we get a bunch of other stuff that kind of fills in before we get to the last, I don't know what that is, the last quarter of the book. So what we're going to try to do is try to hit all those 4 big ones. Ned's coup, Arya's escape, Sansa's letter, and then Jon battling the White. They probably won't all be out this week, but between now and
New
a week and
Year's?
a half from now, 2 weeks. But that's going to be the schedule for us coming up. We don't really have a set plan or schedule on how often we record. We just kind of go at it off the hook. But that's the podcast for today. What time are we at right now?
Sorry, just a second. 31 minutes.
Okay, so that's about the time area that we're looking for.
We're getting better at this.
Yeah. I think there was more tangents this time around than the last. But that about wraps it up for us, guys. Thanks for listening. Let us know what parts you like, what parts you didn't like, what we can do better, and if you have a potential title for this thing that we're doing where we sit around and talk about it.
All right, and thanks for all the feedback